Marvin was on his deathbed in the hospital, surrounded by family. Sensing the end was near, they called his preacher to be with him in his final moments. As the preacher stood by his bedside, Marvin suddenly grew restless and motioned frantically for a pen and paper. The preacher quickly handed them over, and Marvin, with trembling hands, scribbled something down. But before the preacher could read it, Marvin took his last breath. Not wanting to intrude on the moment, the preacher slipped the note into his pocket and forgot about it. Days later, while delivering Marvin's eulogy, the preacher suddenly remembered the note. With a solemn voice, he said, "Just before Marvin passed, he gave me this note. Knowing him, it must be filled with wisdom and inspiration for us all." He unfolded the paper, cleared his throat, and read aloud, "Hey, you're standing on my oxygen tube." One day, Bob decided to visit the zoo. When he reached the ape exhibit, he locked eyes with a massive male ape. Curious, he scratched his head, and to his amusement, the ape did the same. Seeing this, Bob decided to have some fun. He scratched under his arms, jumped around, and let out an ooh. The ape copied him perfectly. Encouraged, Bob kept going. Then, deep in thought, he absent-mindedly scratched his chin. Before he could react, the ape's eyes flared. With a terrifying roar, it bent the steel bars apart, leapt the moat, and proceeded to beat Bob within an inch of his life. Weeks later, Bob woke up in the hospital, completely covered in casts, unable to move. A zookeeper, Albert, entered his room. "Mr. Smith, I need to understand exactly what happened before you were attacked." I don't know," Bob groaned. "The ape was mimicking me. I scratched my head, he scratched his. I played around making noises and scratching my underarms, and he did the same." "Okay, then what happened?" Albert pressed. "I was trying to think of what to do next, so I scratched my chin." Albert's face went pale. "Oh, well, that explains it. You see, in ape language, that means screw you. If the attack had been unprovoked, we'd have to put him down. But now, what a relief." Bob, still trapped in traction for another 6 agonizing months, stewed in his misery. He couldn't move, scratch, or even relieve himself without help. Every waking moment was spent plotting revenge. Finally, after his release, Bob's first stop was the butcher shop. He bought the biggest Polish sausage he could find, along with 2 razor-sharp butcher knives. Then, with a smirk, he marched straight back to the zoo. Standing before the ape's cage once more, he caught its attention. "Remember me?" he sneered. Just like before, the ape mimicked his every move. Bob pulled out the butcher knives, tossing one into the cage. The ape caught it, staring back in eerie silence. Then Bob reached into his pants and pulled out the sausage through his fly. Sure enough, the ape followed suit. With a triumphant grin, Bob raised his knife high, and with one swift motion, he sliced the sausage clean in half. He looked up, eager to witness his revenge unfold, only to see the ape standing there, grinning, scratching his chin. A massive sinkhole suddenly opens up in a remote town and people keep falling in, getting injured. The small local hospital struggles to keep up with the influx of patients, so the mayor calls an emergency city council meeting to find a solution. The smartest counselor suggests, "Let's park an ambulance right next to the hole to transport people faster." Everyone agrees. It's genius. Except they only have 2 ambulances and they're needed in the town center for other emergencies. So the mayor gathers the council again. This time, the second smartest counselor proposes, "Let's close the road between the hole and the hospital so the ambulances can move faster." Once again, unanimous approval. Unfortunately, after a few days, the congestion from rerouted traffic causes even more accidents, making things worse. Frustrated, the mayor calls a third meeting. They need a drastic solution. The third smartest counselor stands up and confidently declares, "We should tear down the hospital and rebuild it next to the hole." The room erupts in applause. That's when the mayor finally loses it. He slams his fist on the table and shouts, "You idiots! Do you have any idea how expensive that would be? There's a way easier solution!" The room goes silent. Everyone leans in, waiting for his brilliant idea. He takes a deep breath and declares, "We fill in the hole and then dig a new one next to the hospital." A golfer playing in Ireland hooked his drive deep into the woods. As he searched for his ball, he stumbled upon a tiny figure lying flat on his back, a little leprechaun, a nasty bump on his head, and the golf ball right beside him. Horrified, the golfer grabbed his water bottle and poured some over the leprechaun, reviving him. What happened? The leprechaun groaned. "I'm so sorry. I think I hit you with my golf ball," the golfer admitted. The leprechaun rubbed his head and sighed. "Well, you got old Patty fair and square. Rules are rules. You get 3 wishes. What'll it be?" The golfer shook his head. "I don't want anything. I'm just glad you're okay, and I'm really sorry." Then, without another word, he walked off. The leprechaun watched him go, impressed. "Wow, what a nice lad," he muttered. "I have to do something for him. I'll give him the 3 things I'd want: an incredible golf game, all the money he'll ever need, and a love life to make the angels weep." A year later, the golfer returned to the same course. On the very same hole, he hit another bad drive into the woods. This time, Patty was waiting. "Aha! 'Twas me that made you hit the ball here," the leprechaun said with a grin. "I just wanted to check in. How's your golf game?" "Unbelievable," the golfer said. "I'm world famous now. That's me work." Patty beamed. "And how's your money situation?" The golfer laughed. "It's incredible. Every time I reach into my pocket, I pull out $100 bills I didn't even know were there." I did that too. "And tell me, how's your love life?" At this, the golfer blushed and looked away. "It's okay." Patty frowned. "Come on now, be honest. How many times a week do you know?" Looking around nervously, the golfer whispered, "Once, sometimes twice." The leprechaun's jaw dropped. "What? Only once or twice a week with all I gave you?" The golfer shrugged. "Well, I figure that's not bad for a Catholic priest in a small parish." A Catholic man goes to confession. "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." "Go on, my son," says the priest. "I swore the other day in the most profane way." "I see. What happened?" "Well, I was out on the golf course. I hit a perfect drive, dead straight, 200 yards, when suddenly it smacked right into a power line stretching across the fairway." "Ah, and that's when you swore." "No, Father, not yet. The ball ricocheted off the power lines and shot deep into the rough." "I see. That must have been when you swore." "No, not then either. As I walked over to hit my second shot, a hawk swooped down from the trees, grabbed my ball in its beak, and flew off with it." The priest's eyebrows shot up. "Surely that's when you swore." "No, Father, because just as the bird flew over the green, the ball slipped from its mouth and landed 2 feet from the hole." A long silence fills the confessional. Then the priest sighs and mutters, "You missed the F*** in putt, didn't you?" Jack Nicholas is sitting in a bar having a drink with Stevie Wonder. "So how's the singing career going?" Nicholas asks. "Not bad," Stevie replies. "My latest album made the top 10, so I can't complain. How's the golf?" "Still playing, still making money, not winning as much as I used to, but I think I finally fixed my swing." Stevie nods. "Yeah, I get that. When my swing goes off, I take a break, think about it, and the next time I play, everything just clicks again." Nicholas blinks. "Wait, you play golf?" "Sure, been playing for years. But, forgive me for asking, Stevie, aren't you blind? How do you play?" Stevie smiles. "No offense taken, it's a fair question. I have my caddy stand in the middle of the fairway and call out to me. I listen to his voice and hit the ball towards him. When I get to my ball, he moves ahead and does the same thing until I reach the green." Nicholas is fascinated. "That's incredible. But what about putting?" "Oh, that's easy," Stevie says. "My caddy lies down with his head next to the hole and calls to me. I just putt towards his voice." Nicholas shakes his head in amazement. "That's unreal. What's your handicap?" "I play off scratch." Nicholas is stunned. "We have to play around sometime." Stevie shrugs. "I don't play for fun, Jack. People don't take me seriously, so I only play for money. Minimum bet, $100,000 a hole." Nicholas thinks it over, then grins. "All right, I'm in. When do you want to play?" Stevie leans in, smirking. There was a preacher who loved golfing. Every chance he got, he was out on the course, swinging away. It was an obsession. One Sunday, the weather was perfect. clear skies, warm sun, and just the right temperature. The preacher was torn, but eventually the pull of the game was too strong. He called his assistant, told him he was sick, packed his car, and drove 3 hours to a golf course where no one would recognize him. He was in heaven, happily playing away. Meanwhile, up in heaven, an angel noticed the preacher's behavior and went to God. "Look at him! He's skipping church to play golf. He should be punished." God thought for a moment, then nodded. "You're right." On the first hole, the preacher teed up and swung. The ball soared effortlessly through the air and landed right in the cup 350 yards away. A perfect hole-in-one. The preacher stood there, mouth agape, staring at his miraculous shot. The angel, stunned, turned to God and asked, "But, I thought you were going to punish him." God smiled and said, "Think about it. Who's he going to tell?" A Scotsman has been stranded on a desert island for over 10 long years. One day he spots a speck on the horizon. It's certainly not a ship, he thinks. The speck gets closer and closer, and he rules out the possibility of a small boat or even a raft. Then, emerging from the surf, is a stunning blonde woman wearing a wetsuit and scuba gear. She approaches the stunned man and says, "Tell me, how long has it been since you had a cigarette?" 10 years, replies the Scotsman. Without a word, she reaches into a waterproof pocket, pulls out a fresh pack of cigarettes, and hands him one. He lights it, takes a long drag, and sighs, "Oh, in the name of the wee man, is that good?" She smiles and asks, "And how long has it been since you've had a sip of good Scotch?" Trembling, the castaway replies, 10 years. She unzips her right sleeve, pulls out a flask, and hands it to him. He opens it, takes a deep swig, and says, "'Tis absolutely fantastic." At this point, she starts slowly unzipping the long zipper down the front of her wetsuit, looks at him, and asks, "And how long has it been since you've played around?" With tears in his eyes, the Scotsman falls to his knees, sobbing, "Oh, sweet Jesus, don't tell me you've got golf clubs in there, too." A woman joins a country club and overhears some guys talking about their golf round. She says, "I played on my college's golf team. I was pretty good. Mind if I join you next week?" The guys don't want to say yes, but they're put on the spot. Finally, one man agrees, "Okay, but we start at 6:30 a.m. He figures the early tea time will scare her off. The woman looks at him and says, "That might be a problem, but can I be up to 15 minutes late?" The guys roll their eyes, but reluctantly agree. At 6:30 a.m. sharp, she shows up and beats them all with an eye-opening 2-under par round. She's fun, friendly, and the guys are impressed. They congratulate her and invite her back the next week. She smiles and says, "I'll be there at 6:30 or maybe 6:45. The next week, she arrives at 6:30 again, but this time, she plays left-handed. Despite that, she still beats them with an even par round. The guys are dumbfounded. She's gracious, charming, and the perfect sport. They invite her back again, but this time each of them secretly hopes to beat her. On the third week, she shows up 15 minutes late. The guys are irritated. This time, she plays right-handed and narrowly beats all 3 of them. The guys grumble about her late arrival being a petty trick, but she's so charming and complimentary of their strong play that they can't stay mad. After the game, the guys decide to have a couple of beers in the clubhouse. One of the men can't take it anymore and asks, "How do you decide whether to golf right-handed or left-handed?" The woman blushes, grins, and replies, "Well, I'm ambidextrous. When I got married, I discovered that my husband always sleeps in the nude. Right before I leave for golf practice, I pull the covers off him. If his willie's pointing to the right, I golf right-handed. If it's pointing to the left, I golf left-handed." The guys burst into laughter at the thought, and one of them, still astonished, asks, "What if it's pointing straight up?" The woman winks and says, "Then I'm 15 minutes late." A priest, a doctor, and an engineer are waiting one morning for a particularly slow group of golfers. As the minutes drag on, they begin getting more and more frustrated, having reserved their tea time weeks in advance. Engineer: "What's the deal with these guys? We've been waiting for 25 minutes. Doctor: "I don't know, but I've never seen such ineptitude." Priest: "Look, here comes the greenskeeper. Let's have a word with him." Priest: "Hi, George. What's going on with that group ahead of us? They're moving so slowly. George. Oh, that's a group of blind firefighters. They lost their sight while saving our clubhouse last year, so we let them play here for free any time. Silence. Priest. That's so sad. I think I'll say a special prayer for them tonight. Doctor. Good idea. I'm going to contact my ophthalmologist buddy and see if there's anything he can do for them. Engineer. Why can't they just play at night? An American, a Scot, and a Canadian are in a terrible car accident. They're all rushed to the emergency room, but tragically, they die before they arrive. Just as the doctors are about to put the toe tag on the American, he suddenly stirs and opens his eyes. The doctors and nurses are shocked, and one of them quickly asks, "What happened?" The American says, "Well, I remember the crash, and then there was this beautiful light. The next thing I know, the Canadian, the Scot, and I were standing at the gates of heaven. St. Peter came over and told us we were too young to die, and for a $50 donation, we could go back to Earth. So I pulled out my wallet, handed him the $50, and next thing I knew, I was back here." The doctor, amazed, asks, "That's incredible. But what happened to the other two?" The American replies, "Last I saw, the Scot was trying to haggle the price, and the Canadian was waiting for the government to pay for his." One day, Pete complained to his friend, "My head really hurts. I guess I should see a doctor." His friend replied, "Don't bother with that. There's a computer at the drugstore that can diagnose anything quicker and cheaper than a doctor. Just tell it your problem, give it a sample of your urine, and the computer will tell you what's wrong and what you should do. It only costs $20. Pete thought he had nothing to lose, so he took a urine sample and went to the drugstore. He found the computer, poured in the sample, and paid the $20. The machine made a bunch of noises, and the lights started flashing. After a moment, a slip of paper came out. It read, "You have migraines. You need to take better care of yourself. Get plenty of rest, drink a lot of water, and avoid bright lights, stress, and strain. Follow up in 2 weeks." Impressed by the accuracy of the machine, Pete thought it was amazing. Then he wondered if the machine could be tricked. So he mixed tap water, a stool sample from his dog, urine samples from his wife and daughter, and even some oil from his car. He went back to the store, poured the concoction into the machine, and paid the $20. This time, he told the machine he had a headache. The machine made its usual noises, flashed its lights, and printed out the following. "Your tap water contains too much waste. Your dog has ringworms. Your teenage daughter is pregnant. Your wife has had 5 lovers in the last 6 months. Your car needs a new radiator. And by the way, no wonder you have a headache." A couple rushed into the town hall just before closing time and caught the judge as he was about to leave. They asked him to marry them. He asked if they had a license, and when they said they didn't, he sent them off to get one. They caught the town clerk just as he was locking up and got the license from him. When they returned to the judge, he pointed out that the names were filled out incorrectly. His name was where hers should be, and vice versa. They rushed back to the clerk, caught him once again, and got a new license. This time, the judge noticed the date was in the wrong format. Once again, they went back to the clerk. After 5 reissued licenses, the judge was finally satisfied. "Judge, I hope you understand why I made you keep going back. If there were any irregularities in the license, your marriage wouldn't be legal, and any children you had would, to put it delicately, be technical bastards." The groom smiled and replied, "That's funny. That's exactly what the clerk called you." A lawyer and his Czechoslovakian friend were camping in a remote section of Maine. Early one morning, they set out to pick berries for breakfast. As they were gathering blueberries and raspberries in large quantities, they suddenly encountered 2 huge bears, a male and a female. The lawyer, spotting the bears, immediately ran for cover. His friend, however, wasn't so lucky, and the male bear caught him and swallowed him whole. Panicked, the lawyer raced back to his Mercedes, sped into town, and got the local backwoods sheriff. The sheriff grabbed his shotgun and rushed back to the berry patch with the lawyer. Sure enough, the bears were still there. "He's in that one!" the lawyer cried, pointing to the male bear, already imagining lawsuits from his friend's family. The sheriff looked at the bears, leveled his gun, took aim, and shot the female bear. "What did you do that for?" the lawyer shouted. "I said he was in the male." Exactly, replied the sheriff, without missing a beat. Would you believe a lawyer who told you the check was in the mail? One day, a woman went to the doctor looking worried. "Doctor, I just can't seem to have a baby," she exclaimed. The doctor nodded thoughtfully and replied, "Well, it looks like there might be a problem with your husband." Surprised, the woman shot back, "A problem with my husband? Maybe. But there can't be a problem with the whole neighborhood." A man receives an advertisement in the mail for a golf resort where everything costs just $1. Excited by the offer, he heads off for a weekend of fun in the sun. He arrives and plays a round of golf for $1. When he goes to dinner that evening, it costs him another $1. His room is only $1 a night. On the last day, he heads out for one final round of golf and stops by the pro shop to charge a sleeve of 3 golf balls to his room. The next morning, as he's checking out, he looks at the bill. Golf, $1 dinner, $1 room, $1 sleeve of golf balls, $3,000. Confused, he asks the manager, "What is this all about? Everything was supposed to cost $1 and now you're charging me $3,000 for 3 golf balls?" The manager looks at him and says, "I'm sorry, sir, but you didn't read the fine print in our promotional brochure. That's what our golf balls cost." The man, frustrated, says, "Well, if I wanted to spend that much, I could have gone to that luxury hotel across the street and paid $1,000 a day for a room. At least I'd know what I was paying for." The manager smiles and replies, "That's right, sir. Over there, they get you by the room. Over here, we get you by the balls." A defendant involved in a lawsuit with large sums of money at stake was talking to his lawyer. "If I lose this case, I'll be ruined." "It's in the judge's hands now," said the lawyer. "Would it help if I sent the judge a box of cigars?" the defendant asked. "Oh, no," the lawyer replied. "This judge is a stickler for ethical behavior. A stunt like that would prejudice him against you. He might even find you in contempt of court. In fact, you shouldn't even smile at the judge." "I see. Good to know," said the defendant. In due time, the judge rendered a decision in favor of the defendant. As the defendant left the courthouse, he said to his lawyer, "Thanks for the tip about the cigars." "I'm sure we would have lost the case if you'd sent them," the lawyer said. "But I did send them," the defendant replied. "What? You did?" the lawyer exclaimed in shock. "Yes," the defendant said. "That's how we won the case." "I don't understand," said the lawyer. "It's simple," the defendant grinned. "I sent the cheapest cigars I could find and enclosed the plaintiff's business card." "Hey, defense attorney, will you please state your age?" "Little old lady, I'm 86 years old." Defense attorney, "Can you tell us in your own words what happened on the night of April 1st? Little old lady, "There I was, sitting on my porch swing, enjoying a warm spring evening. A young man came creeping up to the porch and sat down beside me." Defense attorney, "Did you know him?" Little old lady, "No, but he sure was friendly." Defense attorney, "What happened after he sat down?" Little old lady, "He started rubbing my thigh." Defense attorney, "Did you stop him?" Little old lady, "No, I didn't stop him." Defense attorney, "Why not?" Little old lady, "It felt good. Nobody had done that to me since my Albert died 30 years ago." Defense attorney, "What happened next?" Little old lady, "He started rubbing my breasts." Defense attorney, "Did you stop him then?" Little old lady, "No, I didn't stop him." Defense attorney, "Why not?" Little old lady, "It made me feel alive. I hadn't felt that good in years." Defense attorney, "What happened next?" Little old lady, "Well, by then I was feeling a little hot and bothered, so I asked him to come closer." Defense attorney, "And did he?" Little old lady, "He came closer and then yelled, 'April Fools!'" Defense attorney, "And that's when you shot him?" Little old lady, "Yep, that's when I shot the bastard." 2 attorneys boarded a flight out of Seattle. One took the window seat, the other sat in the middle. Just before takeoff, a physician boarded and took the aisle seat next to them. The physician kicked off his shoes, wiggled his toes, and began settling in when the attorney in the window seat said, "I think I'll get up and grab a Coke." "No problem," said the physician. "I'll get it for you." While the physician was gone, one of the attorneys picked up his shoe and spat in it. When the physician returned with the Coke, the other attorney said, That looks good. I think I'll have one too. Again, the physician kindly went to fetch it, and while he was gone, the second attorney picked up the other shoe and spat in it. The physician returned, and they all sat back to enjoy the flight. As the plane began to land, the physician slipped his feet into his shoes and immediately knew what had happened. "How long must this go on?" he asked. "This fighting between our professions, this hatred, this animosity, this spitting in shoes and pissing in cokes?" Two young guys appear in court after being arrested for drug use. The judge says, "You both seem like nice young men, and I'd like to give you a second chance instead of jail time. I want you to go out this weekend and try to convince others about the dangers of drug use. I'll see you back in court on Monday, and you better have gotten some results or you're going straight to jail." On Monday, the judge asked the first guy, "How did you do over the weekend?" "Well, Your Honor, I persuaded 17 people to give up drugs forever." 17 people? That's wonderful. How did you do it?" "I used a diagram, Your Honor. I drew two circles like this. Oh. I explained that the big circle represents your brain before drugs and the small circle represents your brain after drugs." "That's very clever," says the judge. Then he turns to the second guy. "And how did you do?" "Well, Your Honor, I persuaded 156 people to give up drugs forever." "Wow, 156 people! How did you manage that?" "Well, I used a similar diagram," the guy says. "I drew two circles like this. Oh. Then I pointed to the small circle and said, 'This is your sphincter before prison.'" An atheist became incensed over the Christmas holiday preparations. He filed a lawsuit arguing that while Christians and Jews had their celebrations, atheists had no holiday of their own. The case was brought before a judge. After listening to the long, passionate presentation by the atheist's lawyer, the judge banged his gavel and declared, "Case dismissed." The lawyer immediately stood and objected. "Your Honor, how can you dismiss this case? The Christians have Christmas, Easter, and many other observances. The Jews have Passover, Yom Kippur, and Hanukkah. Yet my client and all other atheists have no such holiday." The judge leaned forward and calmly replied, "Obviously your client is too confused to know about, much less celebrate his own atheist holiday." The lawyer, growing smug, said, "Your Honor, we are unaware of any such holiday for atheists. When exactly might this holiday be?" The judge grinned. "Well, it comes every year on the same date. Psalm 14:1 states, 'The fool says in his heart, there is no God.' Therefore, if your client says there is no God, according to the Bible, he is a fool. April Fool's Day is his holiday. Now, get out of my courtroom." One November afternoon, I picked my daughter up from kindergarten. As she bounced out of the classroom and climbed into the back seat, I asked, "What did you do today?" She could barely contain her excitement. "We learned that boys are different from girls," she chirped. I glanced at her through the rearview mirror, just catching the top of her head. "Oh? How are they different?" I asked, bracing myself. "Well, my teacher said that boys have a thing and girls don't," she declared matter-of-factly. I paused. "Well, yes, that's true," I said, fumbling for words. There was a long, awkward silence. Then she piped up again. "That's how girls know boys are boys. They see that thing that hangs down and they know he's a boy." I mentally calculated the 5-minute drive home, which now felt like an hour. She wasn't done, though. "Did you know that when the boys see a girl, they puff up?" I started to sweat a little. Well, I stammered, desperately trying to change the subject, but she wasn't finished. "Why do the girls like the boys to have those things?" Now I was really stuck. I mean, what woman hasn't asked herself that at least once? "Well, I muttered, but she had her own answer. "It's 'cause it moves when they walk. And then the girls see that and know they're boys, and then they like them. And then the boy sees the girl, puffs up, and the girl knows he likes her too. And then they get married, and then they get cooked." I blinked, a little confused by the cooked part, but overall I thought she had a decent grasp on things. We finally pulled into the driveway, and she hopped out of the car, eager to show me something. "I drew a picture," she said. I wasn't sure I was ready, but I looked anyway, and there it was, a crayon drawing of a very proud-looking turkey, puffed up with its magnificent snood hanging over its beak, its tail feathers standing tall and regal. I couldn't contain my laughter. There I was, crying with laughter at my daughter's innocent drawing of a turkey. But when I told her I loved it, because I really did, she forgave me for laughing. That was the end of the conversation. For her. For me, though, every year, I remember it. And to be honest, I haven't looked at a turkey or a man the same way since.